Good morning. Welcome to the 504 show. My name is Holly Bell. I am the Student and Family Rights Specialist for the Utah State Board of Education, and I oversee Section 504. So I'm your go-to if you have questions and need assistance with Section 504. And I have with me today my friend and colleague, Kendra Muir. She's our school nurse specialist, school nurse and wellness specialist. Yes, I should just let you introduce you. Anyway, keeper of Band-Aids and all things advice on health. So today we're doing a long overdue webinar on students with allergies. And I keep saying I don't know how it has taken me so long. I've been here 8 years and it's taken me this long to do a webinar on allergies. So we've been really excited about this webinar. And we're going to start with some official things that we need to start with. So just as a disclosure, this is not intended to be legal advice. And this content is for general information purposes. And there are no relevant financial relationships with ineligible companies for planners, presenters, reviewers, or others in control of content for this activity. All right. So this activity is a joint effort between the Utah Department of Health and specifically the HEAL program and the Utah State Board of Education. And today we will be offering nursing continuing professional development contact hours. So we're offering 1.5 NCPDs for this webinar. Just a reminder that you must attend this session in its entirety. And then when it's at its conclusion, you'll submit your evaluation to receive those hours. And also, if you're a licensed educator, we will be offering credits for at 1.5 relicensure points if you attend the webinar. So we will be sending this information out through the listserv. So it will go out through the nursing listserv and the Section 504 listserv so that you can let us know if you want credit. And then you all have like little quiz that they need to do. And also, we're going to be monitoring the YouTube chat if you have questions. So I have a favor to ask you right now. Someone just say hello to us in the chat or whatever you want. Just be nice so that we know it's working. And so we'll just be checking that throughout and asking questions and answering questions as we go on. So getting on board. Okay, you just let me know and I'm going to go and move forward with our learning intentions. We want you to understand when student allergies may qualify for protections under Section 504 and strategies for supporting students with allergies in school settings. And so at the end of this webinar, we are hoping that you can say, I have learned at least one new thing on implementing Section 504 plans for students with allergies. I can recognize when a referral for Section 504 consideration is appropriate, and I can apply practical school-based supports to allergy-related situations. And I think that is where you are. Why you are probably participating today is to find out what can I actually do. So when it comes to allergy safety, Utah law focuses on three main pillars, which are access, autonomy, and protection. So in Utah Code Section 26B-4-406, this specific law mandates that all schools maintain a stock epinephrine applicator on site, and that the EpiPen is within, that is easily accessible for any qualified adult at the school. Just like, students are legally allowed to carry and use their own EpiPens as long as the paperwork from their parents and doctors is on file authorizing that. We don't normally see that with younger children, but sometimes in our high schools we'll see that, or our junior highs. And also we offer annual training for our volunteer staff. All the schools are required to train because they are stepping up for student safety. And the law protects those that have been trained, also called qualified adults, from liability. And so you must be a qualified adult to receive to receive the immunity from civil and criminal liability, to administer that. All right. What would make a student with an allergy or several allergies eligible for Section 504? Just like any other disability when we're doing an evaluation for Section 504, we're looking at, does the allergy result in a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity? And so we have some examples. This is very medical related. So some of the major life activities that are impacted are major bodily functions. Finally, I got it. Immune system, digestive or respiratory functions, and then our daily activities would be eating, breathing, or concentrating. And there's a whole bunch of major life activities. So we know that we're looking at individual students. They might have other daily life activities that they are substantially limited in, but these are just some examples. Okay, so I want to talk about the ADAA, so the Americans with Disabilities Act, Amendments Act, and when we're thinking about substantial, because of course with Section 504, we don't have any real guidance on what substantial means, but it does not mean a total inability to perform an activity. So the student is not limited. That we just need to see that the student is limited compared to most people in the general population. So it's a broad construction. We're not trying to be really strict in our evaluation in what substantial means. All right. Episodic conditions and mitigating measures. Episodic conditions are those disabilities that we've evaluated, and we've determined that a student has a substantial limitation in one or more major life activities, but they come and go. And so something that would be an example would be a seasonal allergy. And so we're not going to see it active in the winter. In my life, it's in the spring, you're going to see it active, and I don't ever want to go outside. And then in the winter, they're not active. So these are episodic. They come and go. And these students do qualify under Section 504. If when the allergy is active, they are substantially limited. But we need to disregard, just with any disability, when we're making the evaluation, we need to disregard the mitigating measures. So they're taking some kind of medication and for me, medication doesn't always work when it's really, really bad, when the allergens are really high for me. And so we can't take that into account. We need to think about this as far as when our eligibility, we're looking at that, not considering the mitigating measures like that. And so we're not going to consider the EpiPens and histamines. Did I say that right? Any histamines? I think you might have said it right. That. Or strict avoidance if the student would be like me, staying in my house and ignoring the weeds that are growing in my yard. If the student would be limited without these, they are 504 eligible. Okay, child find. In case you hadn't heard, it is our responsibility legally to identify, locate, and evaluate students who may need special education and related services, which includes Section 504. So they may not need specially designed instruction, especially our students who have medically related disabilities. They often will only fall under Section 504. And so we're looking for some of those indicators that they might have a disability related to allergies. Obviously, a parent who tells us is very helpful. Someone who has an individualized healthcare plan or an emergency action plan, which Kendra's going to describe. And if they have a diagnosis that you're aware of, or a serious allergic incident occurs on campus or during a school activity, and I thought it was interesting, you told me it's not always, what'd you say? It's not always like just first exposure. It's like, sometimes it's usually with an allergy or something as severe as anaphylaxis. It's not the first time the student experiences that or is exposed to that substance or whatever they're allergic to. It's subsequent exposures. So you may be seeing the anaphylaxis or the allergy for the first time because you don't know when that student was previously exposed. And so it's just really important to consider all of these things when we're planning and trying to keep those kids safe at school. And I'm looking for that. So you can't require doctors, no. So that's as always, you can't require it. For a 504. For a 504. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm not going to ask. Yeah. Nurse, 504. And so to begin the evaluation, you just have to use all the data you have, your nurse logs, parent reports, historical reactions, whatever information you can get. If the parents give you some kind of a diagnosis or feedback from a physician that does not involve the individualized healthcare plan, then that's great. Unless you want to pay for them to go to a physician and get that. And even then, you have to look at multiple sources of evidence. So just know that that's not a requirement. All right, we are going to talk about a case. We're going to present several cases to demonstrate some of the things that we talk about. And this case came out of West Gilbert Charter Elementary School. This is an Office for Civil Rights case. And what happened was a student with a documented dog allergy and allergy-induced asthma attended a school where another student used a service dog. And the school relied on informal measures without conducting an evaluation. So the Office for Civil Rights said, this is a Section 504 violation. You failed to evaluate the allergic student and relied on common sense measures instead of individualized data-based accommodations, modifications, and related services. Okay, so what do we learn from this? Allergies do not justify excluding a service animal. This comes up all the time. So when disabilities conflict, you need to evaluate and implement coordinated accommodations and modifications and related services to both students so they can both safely access education. Otherwise, it's going to result in a denial of fate for one of them. So we can't put one allergy above the other. I'd say one of the most complicated scenarios when it comes to a student with an allergy is allergies to animals or dogs, service dogs in particular. And it gets really tricky when you're in a small school, you have one teacher for a class, you have, you're in a charter school, there's a particular activity that they're participating in, because we'll talk about extracurricular activities and things like that. This is really difficult, and I'm not going to say it isn't. But when it comes down to the Office for Civil Rights and students accessing their free appropriate public education, you have to evaluate both and look at individualized needs for both, and one does not take precedence over the other. But I acknowledge that it's super tricky. Oh, yep, okay. So there are many types of allergies, things that we don't consider, but could occur in a school environment where students are exposed. So the big 9 are the ones listed under the food allergies. So these are the ones that you're going to see most commonly. And then as far as like other allergies, like when they're outside, you may see some insect stings. They may be allergic to certain medications, including, I know a lot of our schools have some schools have like a stock supply of like ibuprofen or Tylenol. And so there's that potential risk. And so that's something that as a planning team, working with your school nurse and working as a 504 coordinator, you want to definitely plan for. And then, of course, there's always environmental and chemical type allergens, which are really hard to avoid, like with someone's perfume, but, something that we need to plan for just in case. And then, of course, like latex, which can be found in so many different items. So some of those kids that have latex allergies. So it's important to consider how that's going to affect them when you're writing accommodations and when you're planning their healthcare as well.
Well, and I'm just going to admit this. So I think one of the reasons I didn't do allergies for a while is I was like, oh, it's just gluten and lactose and peanuts and, and so then I was like, wait a minute, there are tons of allergens out there.
Tons.
And so, I woke up to reality. The environmental and chemical one is hard for me as a Bath and Body Works addict and perfume addict. That is really hard for me. Do these rubber bands, do they count as latex or in that one, the last one?
So
I always have one.
So I don't know if I think it depends on the rubber band, because sometimes it's just covered, like what you're looking at is just covered with material, but the latex is inside, and that could definitely affect someone.
Oh my goodness. I'm thinking about all our students with like long hair and braids and stuff. I know this is probably not the we didn't talk about. I'm just thinking through this. There's so much of this.
There is. Well, the nice thing about
pencils,
the thing about latex is that they have to be exposed to it, and so a lot of students are very aware of their allergy. Especially if they've had a serious reaction before, which this is kind of what we're centralizing our talk on today, is those that could fall into anaphylaxis. And so they're really good at avoiding things, even at a very young age.
Okay.
But like you're not going to see a child pick up a rubber band if they have a latex allergy, because they're pretty good at it too. But it does take a team. It takes school staff as well as the student, the parents, everyone to be involved.
Okay. So that's when it comes to the substantial limitation, and kind of meeting as a team to discuss the severity, and just very individualized. So, if you wonder what I'm pointing at, it's the slides. They're in front of us. I'm not just like pointing it here. So, anyway.
Hey. Okay, so districts should always take steps to sort of monitor like student lunches. They should have, if they have school zones, as far as planning and stuff, it's important that people around that student are aware. So they talk about like allergen aware tables or zones. Each school is going to sort of play this out differently, and depending on the school policies, but also on, the child as well. But it's important that staff that are going to be around that student are aware and they're monitoring. So you might have like a lunchroom staff involved if it's, a food allergy. If it's someone that's monitoring the lunchroom, they may need to be aware, as far as like if there is an allergy aware table, that because some children, like when someone sits next to them, there's that risk of cross-contamination. Mm-hmm. And even if we have sort of, an allergy where they have to ingest it, you just need to be really careful, because every child's different. Not every child that has it in the air is going to react, but sometimes they will. So touching their skin may cause a reaction. And while we have an EpiPen, and we may have an EpiPen at the school, the stock supply of the EpiPen that we talked about earlier, that's meant for emergencies only. We do not want to plan on an event happening. We want that to be the worst case scenario. That's a last sort of life-saving attempt. So we want to plan and sort of prevent these things from happening. As far as like classrooms, it talks about a no peanuts rule. We know that we can't control other students, that what they bring into the classroom. They may be the only ones. They may be a student maybe that can't afford more than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But we do want the parents to be aware that there is a child in there that could have a very serious reaction. And so just using that education and then planning for it in the 504 is a great approach to this. Also, just another thing to consider is like before, if you have like a designated table that's allergen aware, just to have those cleaning protocols in place. Just remember that using hand sanitizer is not a fix-it for a student that is being exposed to maybe peanuts. If another student that has touched peanuts comes into contact with their skin, that they may have a reaction depending on that child and the severity of that allergy. So hand sanitizer, no. Actually using soap and water, yes.
Ooh, okay. So I want to go through one at a time so I have some things in my head. So just looking at that social isolation, I mean, part of the experience in school that is so enjoyable, unless you're in middle school, is having like social, relationships and friends, and that's healthy. And so it's just sad to imagine our student with an allergy is sitting alone at a table eating lunch. And so trying to figure out a way where they can have that social interaction during the lunchtime, but then be in a safe environment. And I put monitor in all caps because I'm especially picturing this with elementary students where they're just like running over to the table to talk to their friend, on the allergy table and this happening so that they do have an exposure. So it's training staff, but also training students. I think like, what is this table? What is an allergy? What does it mean? How can we protect ourselves and our friends? And I think too, just training, and when I talk about training the staff, so that they know what has the allergens in it. Like they might have a student with a granola bar whatever. A student might bring something over there, they have no idea. So they need to be trained that what has allergens in it.
Absolutely.
And we talked about the classroom. I listed a bunch of cases. Case law gets messy. OSDR cases get messy. And it's not like cut and dry. It's, you got to look at your certain district that you're in as far as the court cases and we're just weighing a balance. In most of the cases, you're not guaranteed a peanut-free environment. And I think, I'll mention that again, but you can't guarantee that. But there are spaces where you can-ish, like the table. In your classroom, what would that look like? I think you can say we don't have food in the classroom, right? We don't have cell phones, we don't have food, we don't have gum, we don't, that you can have that as a rule. There are other places in the school that you can eat more safely. So you can have that in the classroom and have a hand washing station outside the classroom, be sanitizing the desks and things like that. So just thinking about some of those spaces in the school that we can have more of a protective. And I was asking you, like, what if, like our elementary kids, so when they eat peanut butter, get it all over themselves, like would that be something like if they just had, peanut butter on their shirt, would that impact their friend?
Really depends on the student with the allergy.
Okay. So yeah, individualized.
I like how you tied that in.
It's a team effort, individualized. Okay. And so let's be thinking about all contexts. Our science labs, our art supplies, our erasers, our balloons, sensory bins. So let's think about our school psychologists, our school counselors. You've got those little fidgets. You got those things in your, in your little sensory bin. So what's in there? Does it have allergens in there for your students? I think teachers are often more aware of allergens and, our lunch staff. But what about our other staff who maybe have, their private offices and working with students? They need to be aware of allergens as well. I'm thinking especially with somebody with a Bath and Body Works addiction, that if I was in a closed-in space, with in my office, that it might be even increased exposure to the scents and things like that. Substitutes, this comes up over and over in case law and OCR cases. You have to, you don't get a buy on, a day off of faith for students. So we've got to get a system in place for our substitutes, and notifying them, and not just saying, hey, the student has a peanut allergy. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? What does that look like for that student? What kind of protocols do we have in place? Do we have an emergency action plan? We don't just leave a note for the substitute, hey, so-and-so has a peanut allergy. They need to have training for our coaches and our aides that come and go in the classroom. It's not just our teachers and those who are always around.
They need that thoughtful consideration.
For instance, I want to say Gloucester.
I think you said it right, yeah.
County Public Schools. So in this case, a student with a severe peanut allergy participated in classroom activities where food was occasionally used. The school did not routinely provide snacks and offered a safe alternative when food was part of the activity. So in this case, there was no violation. So it does not require schools to provide food, and the alternatives do not need to be identical. I'm going to come back to that. So our lesson here in this case is that Section 504 requires meaningful access, but not identical treatment. Keep that pause on that. And then when schools provide food to all students, they must offer a safe way for students with allergies to participate. So there was another case that I tried to find that kind of makes me sad. There was a student, I think they had some kind of a allergy to the popcorn or, something in popcorn. And they had a movie day. And so because they were providing a snack to the whole general education population, so that's when it's required to have a safe way to participate. They gave them 2 pieces of candy, and the OCR was fine with that. So that's kind of sad. But that is the rule.
Let's bring that point home.
Yeah, that's the rule, is that you have to provide something for them that's safe. And when you have maybe a parent that's saying you need to have a snack available for my student, and this often comes up more with diabetes, things like that, you don't have to do that. It's something the parents do have to provide. But if you are providing something for the general education population, you have to provide something for that student.
Yes. And so we did touch on this earlier, but it's really important to consider all aspects of the student's school day. So whether they're going on field trips in the spring, we want to make sure that whoever's assigned, whichever staff are going to be at that event or that trip, that they're trained. And so nurses know all about this, but it's important for everyone to be on board with these temporary type, events. And then also another consideration, is buses. A lot of our students are bused to and from the school. And so, bus drivers need to be aware of this allergy too. This still falls under the school's responsibility as the student is being bused to and from school. So, making those considerations and bringing them up and thinking about them and how that could affect the student on their bus ride home or even to another event or a field class, field trip. And then also just a lot of those extracurriculars. We get a lot of questions. Well, do I have to provide a healthcare plan type services for maybe summer school or clubs or sports after school? And you do, because that is part of the student's school day, and it doesn't end when the bell rings at the end of the day. It continues on as long as it's a school-sponsored event, and there's school staff there to sort of help with those situations.
So are you telling me that a student who is assigned a one-to-one nurse, which it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have to go on all of these other things too?
They do. Yeah, you have to have staff there that is aware and is able to carry out these plans that we're talking about today, whether it's a 504 accommodation or a healthcare plan, then yes, they have to be present. They have to be able to help that student out and provide those accommodations.
Well, we talked about after school activities, like we have a school play and the student wants to go as a spectator. You have to provide those accommodations. And we were talking about how that might look like Like you may have a space for a student with a mobility device or wheelchair. You have a space for them. So have a allergen-free section, reserved seating. Provide reserved seating for this student and their family to attend the play or whatever, and have a nurse if that's appropriate. And so, and then I'm thinking about, been a parent of 3 children and volunteered for plenty of field trips, especially Sundance Film Festival. So your parents, like anyone who's volunteering to serve as a chaperone for these events, they need to be aware as well and trained. So we've got to be thinking about the environment they're going into and plan ahead. So we were talking about hay allergies and the Wheeler Farm or whatever. We might need to kind of readjust. You may have done that every year, but I don't know. We might have to readjust where we're going this year for our fall festival. That's part of it too, is I hear people say, well, we've done this every year. It's a tradition. You have a student who needs to access vape. You may have served peanut butter for the last 12 years at your spring, whatever. Let's think about other things that we could maybe serve. So yeah, we have to adapt. We have to be flexible when it comes to that. I will say that if there is a field trip, you can, if there is a significant risk to their health and safety, then you can pull or have the student stay back from a field trip or something. But you better have the documentation that you have tried, you have thought of everything, and have that data behind you for making that decision. And one of the things is to think about is appropriateness. So if you, in your school, you have a student perhaps who needs a mobility device, and I'm just making a comparison. Like if you're not you can't carry a child, in the school up the stairs. And I don't know if you could think of an example with an allergy, but if that would not, if something would not be appropriate in the school, you can't, it wouldn't be appropriate outside of the school. So there are some of those exceptions to think about.
Okay, so this, what we're seeing on our screen right now,
The wrong slide.
the wrong slide.
I'm trying. There it is.
Okay, so this is actually a gluten allergy sample 504 plan. And so this plan has been accepted. It's not going to look the same for every child. We've been sort of trying to drive that point home. For example, a gluten allergy is really, there's different things to think about. This is why it's so very important to work with your school staff to sort of coordinate care between nurses, 504 coordinators when you're planning care. For example, a gluten allergy, an allergy is actually to the wheat proteins. And we also have something called celiac disease, which are 2 completely different medical conditions that we may see in the schools. So like an allergy to wheat proteins, the student is not going to need a permanent laminated bathroom pass because it's not affecting their GI system. So an actual allergy like that, where it could be severe as anaphylaxis, that would affect more of their lungs. And so it's really, really important to just consider all these things when you're planning care, to look to sort of find out about that student, find out what they have, work with your other school staff so that the care that you're providing is meaningful and it helps that student. That's the whole reason for it. Also, another consideration is like a gluten-free curriculum. We have a lot of students that take cooking classes in high school, or they're around different ingredients. So that sort of thoughtful consideration is really important when we're writing 504 plans. Where if it is something that's health related, I just always ask that you bring your school nurse into it, to bring up any other considerations they may have missed. And then also, notifying parents of the of the presence of a student with a wheat or a gluten allergy. It's the same with all allergies. If they're going to be coming into contact with it, the best prevention is to prevent coming into contact. And so that's what a lot of our 504s and healthcare plans are there for, is we want to make sure that we're planning for that care so that we don't have a reaction. We don't have the worst case scenario. And then we talked about having a list of safe snacks for students, teachers, like if they are providing popcorn for the entire class, having something that the students with a popcorn allergy might have, having something else. So when you're offering it as a classroom activity, you want to make sure that you're also accommodating those students that maybe can't have that.
Well, I guess we might want to check with the parents and say, I don't know, maybe they don't
Absolutely.
have candy.
Yeah, this should all be in the planning process.
Yeah.
Like they should be talking to parents beforehand, finding out, well, what would you like to do? What do you think is reasonable? Sometimes the parents have great, advice. They have a great input because they know that student best. So, so like you might be thinking, well, I'll just give them some Skittles, but maybe they don't like popcorn anyway, and they weren't going to eat it, or like you don't have to think too hardly on this. You just need to make sure it's individualized.
Yeah. Well, I guess we don't give all students, they don't like popcorn. Like you get what you get, and you'll throw a fit. But I do think or you do, and we just let you. But talking with the parents and having a plan ahead. Go ahead. I think I interrupted.
Yes, absolutely. So we talked about maybe having, on the slide, this talks about having safe snacks for the students, teachers to hand out. But also, another thing that you can do as far as what this is suggesting is having like a signed agenda. And what you're thinking about that is like these students, sometimes they have to go to these doctor's appointments and they're already being interrupted from classroom time and instruction. And that's so important. We learned after COVID how important that is for them to be present. So we want to make the most of their time. So using these little tools and coming up with these, ideas that help to support these students is sort of will make a great sample or a great 504 plan for the student.
And then our last one is reviewing the plan with the student and helping them develop self-advocacy skills. So this is, just so you know where this came from, this is OCR tested, OCR approved. This came right out of a case, a resolution with the Office for Civil Rights. And so these are just examples. Like you said, it has to be individualized. And I just thought that we might want to check the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
See if we have any questions.
That's a good time to check the chat. And so it looks like some people are having some connection issues, but other than that, I don't see any questions. So
I guess if they're having connection issues. So sorry.
Any quick question.
Okay.
So does every healthcare plan need to have a 504 plan? We are actually going to get to that.
Okay.
So hold off on that question. We'll be talking more about that in just a second.
Okay. So here are some. We did the gluten allergy.
Yep.
And then a sample 504 plan
For environmental allergies.
Wait, oh yeah. So was I talking about environmental allergies? I think I was talking about environmental allergies. Yes, I was. Okay. So we're looking at environmental allergies. So these are some of the things that are in the environment. Examples would be for environmental allergies. So it would be like, it could be hay. Well, sure. Do we have hay in the classroom? I guess if you have, yeah, you could. There could be hay in the classroom. So some of the things that we were talking about, like the science classes and labs, even just in the air. Glenn Williams, who did the last one with me, might be on here, and I hope I hope I kind of get this right, but he was telling me about what he learned about a situation with a student with a environmental allergy. And he learned so much about like the air filtration system and looking at maybe some of the things that I don't know, HEPA filters or I'm not an HVAC like specialty either. But there are things you can do just even within your ventilation system. It's so like thinking broadly, but the environmental allergies, the chemical things on surfaces and our cleaning products and things like that. So
once you're aware, once you're aware of the environmental allergy, because it's really hard to plan if you're not aware, but you can't educate yourself beforehand. That's when you want to sort of be mindful and be thinking of these different accommodations that you could be putting for that student.
I'm thinking of a case that came up a few years ago with a student with a severe allergy that was airborne. Is that an environmental allergy or is that a food allergy?
That would be an environment because it's in their environment. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this had to do with strawberries, a strawberry allergy. And so we were talking about things that are like, well, there's strawberry Pop-Tarts in the machine. Well, take the strawberry Pop-Tarts out of the machine.
Is it real strawberries or is it just strawberry flavored?
Yeah. Don't have strawberry muffins, have blueberry muffins or that kind of thing. It's really difficult when it comes to the lunchroom with when it comes to like gluten. And I learned that there's a difference between lactose allergy and a milk allergy, right?
Yeah. Lactose is the sugar in the milk.
Yeah. And so,
and intolerance is different as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so we're thinking about airborne allergies. That's, it's complicated, but there are things in the environment and the Office for Civil Rights. This was a plan that they approved. So an evaluation by a specialist, including like you get your facilities person there, air filtration to the classroom or portable filters that you could put in the classroom, notifying what like we talked about since and that Holly's really struggling with this one.
Also, I was going to say too, there's a form. So it does require a medical provider's signature, but if you really want to work with your lunchroom staff, for example, for those food allergies, they do have a form that you can access on the USBE website that the students will have their healthcare providers fill out. But also that form will maybe possibly give you other options as far as planning the 504. And then working with your school nurse to see if she has a plan as well already in place.
Yeah, and we're going to give you resources. We'll send out the slides, share those with you. I didn't even think about fibers and clothing.
Yeah.
That's really complicated.
It is really, we have students that are coming to school when they didn't used to be able to come to school because we are allowing, they are needing that education just like everyone else. So once you know the individualized sort of struggle that student's going through, again, working together and trying to find a solution so they can access their education.
Maybe it's about like where you sit. Anyway, these are tricky, y'all. That's why we're having a webinar and don't expect to have all the answers, but we are here to troubleshoot. Like you can email us anytime and we will try to work through things with you. So another part of the plan was designation of a restroom to be cleaned and stocked with products appropriate for a chemical-free environment. So we have a designated space, provision of advance notice to the student's family and staff for planned building maintenance and renovations that might involve materials that are offensive to a chemically reduced environment. So be thinking of our construction that we're doing in our schools. Provision of outdoor physical education activity in an area that has not been treated with pesticides or fertilizers. And that is the plan that OCR approved. And again, you're going to individualize, but this is something that you can see, okay, these are some ideas, and this is what OCR said, hey, this works.
I just thought of one as far as environmental allergies. I remember when I was working in the schools as a school nurse, the day that they would come by and they would mow the grass. A lot of students had allergies to grass. And so if you're aware of that, making those accommodations and planning safe, a safe environment so they can go to school that day.
Oh, that is really smart. And if they're in a rotation, like we mow your lawn on these days or whatever, so working with your auxiliary staff to find out ahead of time when they're going to be doing that type of, I didn't even think about that, about the grass. Okay, so some things to be aware of that you had mentioned. There might be frequent absences, especially if they have these episodic allergies. Certain times of the year, they might have allergies. And I'm thinking about this time of the year, there's a lot of, end of the year testing and things like that. So we're probably going to need to look at having different testing allowances and things like that. And be aware that they can experience isolation from peers at meal times. So when we're providing these safe spaces, there's an emotional, a mental impact too that can happen when they're feeling really isolated or they're feeling very different from their peers. And they may have an ongoing sense of fear or stress about going into anaphylaxis or having a life-threatening reaction because they know it's, and also the staff can have some anxiety around that. And experiencing an incident of anaphylaxis, which can be life-threatening while at school. So there's a lot of fear around that. I do want to mention now that since it came to my mind, 504, it expands across the life. It applies throughout the lifespan. And I oversee or I provide technical assistance on K through 12, but we need to be thinking about our staff with allergies too. And they are protected under 504. I find that a lot of adults don't understand that. And know how to advocate for themselves for those accommodations and modifications for themselves. And so, especially if you're an administrator out there, be aware of your staff who may have allergies. Maybe ask if there are allergies that they, need accommodations for. Let them know that they have protections from discrimination under Section 504, because I don't think a lot of adults understand that. And which kind of brought something to my mind too. We need to maintain confidentiality. So for instance, when you said, make sure that the other parents are aware that there is a student with a peanut allergy. There is a student with a peanut allergy. There is not this student with a peanut allergy. Because we can't ask about specific people, do you have a disability? Or we can't say this student has a disability. That's not appropriate or legal. So there's some things that I wanted to remember to say.
Absolutely. Yes. And so with that, we've talked a lot about planning individualized care. I was going to say on your slide though, too, a lot of these questions and this planning can be done with the student as well, not just the parent, but also the student as well, as far as, finding out what is going to help them. I'm thinking about isolation, giving them choices and options. I think that's an important consideration to make, is to bring the student into that planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so talking about training in the paper trail, this is very important for not only Section 504, but also for nursing. We learned early on that if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And that's by the eyes of the law. And so it is school's primary protection. I know that we're so very busy and we're we're doing it, but we didn't document it. It's really important that you document that as early as possible, because when we see these sort of cases go wrong, and we see, that when parents are at this last resort and they're filing these complaints, sometimes it's not immediate. It's not even within the same school year. Mm-hmm. So you need to make sure that you're documenting to protect yourself, but also so you can remember, because even though, you're I will never forget this, you do forget the details, and that documentation is so very important in a court of law.
Well, and I imagine it would really be helpful for the next school that they go to, for, the next teacher that they go to, and especially if we're looking at our students who are in high schools and like semester changes and things like that, making sure that that's communicated.
The new teachers are aware. Yeah, that's a good point. And so another thing as far as like paper trails and training is registered nurses by law can delegate and train non-medical staff. So for those schools that don't have a registered nurse, you need to consider that. So a principal cannot delegate medical care. They cannot plan the medical care. And so when you're having these 504 accommodations, because that's when that team would definitely be needed as like in a school without a school nurse, it's important to realize that the school may have to contract with a registered nurse to train and delegate that care. And you want to, again, document the training that's been done. We do have some great resources. Again, like Holly said, we will be talking about those a little bit later and showing you where they are. We have a lot of forms, check-off lists, training lists, things like that. But the training needs to be done by someone who's qualified to provide it. Usually that's your school nurse if you're lucky enough to have one in your school. And if they're not there every day, that's even more important to get that training and to be prepared. As far as like logs, the training logs, it's really important that, if the nurse does a training at the beginning of the year and makes everyone sort of go through the demonstration and they're all qualified providers, it's really important to have that documented because, again, like we talked about earlier, a qualified adult is actually someone who's gone through a specific training with someone who's qualified to provide that. So not just anyone could give an EpiPen. Say you have someone that comes in the school and they take the stock EpiPen and they give it because they want to, protect that student. You can actually, it really puts schools at makes them more liable if they don't have that qualified person providing that care. Mm-hmm. So just all this planning is just so very important. And I know you have so much to do during your school day. Yeah, so much to do and so much things to plan
just
for.
Sitting around.
You're like, how on earth am I going to do this?
Uh-huh.
Well, that, again, is why we're having this webinar. You can reach out to myself. You can reach out to Holly if you need to run through scenarios. Yeah. We're more than happy to sort of help.
And we're not on the team.
We're not on the team.
We can't provide like specific
But if you get stuck,
we can try.
Yeah. If you get stuck, or if you're like, I don't know what to do, or can this happen? We are happy to provide the knowledge that we have to help you through that situation.
Yeah. And y'all, there's one thing that you have to provide the Office for Civil Rights, and that is your data. So I know it sounds bizarre that you don't have to have a signed 504 plan. You don't have to, the only thing is they have to be able to see the data you use for the evaluation, for the things that you're doing. I always use this as an example because it kind of, I was really surprised. The OCR counted a sticky note as evidence and as documentation. So just write it down somewhere. I don't recommend sticky note, but that did work in that case. And so, yeah, just making sure that everyone is aware.
Absolutely. And then continuing on that thought, just ensuring that like your guest teachers, if say the nurses are teaching maturation, that, and they have someone with an allergy. I mean, you don't usually give anything out, during maturation, but your schools may. Just making sure that has been planned for in advance. And also,
I think I was allergic to the maturation.
I think a lot of people are, especially school staff. I think they're even more allergic to maturation.
Oh yeah, I bet.
So having like FERPA allows schools to have sort of those health alerts, but just making sure that those guest speakers that they have access and they have that knowledge, so that they don't, inadvertently expose a student that has a known allergy. And then also, again, like I said at the beginning, the gold standard is if it's not documented, training logs, signature pages, etc., like this person did receive the training, then it did not happen in the eyes of the law.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to another case. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Nope.
No,
Some
okay.
comments.
All right. We like those. If they're nice comments.
They were nice.
We like helpful feedback as well.
Yes, we do.
Just save them till the end because that'll bum us out. Okay. This one's all you.
Okay. So this is an actual case of a student that had a documented peanut allergy. They had a Section 504 plan that required medication after exposure. So after eating food that contained peanuts in the school. So the problem here in this scenario was that the staff failed to administer the required medication. And I've actually seen this occur when a student had, the staff had been trained, they had received the training, it was documented, and in an actual case, the staff did not give the medication. Whether it was, they sort of were at a loss for words, like I just was, or they just, they felt like, well, maybe this isn't happening. That proper planning, that's sort of what we want to have. We want to make sure that they're going to do what is in the plans. And so the ruling from the Office of Civil Rights was that they found that the district denied free and appropriate education under Section 504 by failing to implement the student's existing allergy accommodations. And so this came back to the school, but that's why it's just a really good case because, like, I've seen this in schools. Our educators, especially, they do not go to school to become to give EpiPens, and so it's really important when planning that you have the right qualified adult in the school that's going to be providing that medication. If there's any question about it, you need to address that as a school nurse. And then also, if you're writing accommodations, you need to also make sure that you're writing accommodations that are going to actually happen. So we did have a situation where a student in their 504 plan had an accommodation that if their blood sugar was at a certain level, then they could retake the test. But that was not brought up. So the test was actually outside of the classroom. It was like an after-school type test. And the student failed the test and then came back and they were allowed to retake it. But there was questions about that. Can they retake it? Yes. If it's in the 504 plan and that's what it states, then then they are legally by law allowed to retake that test. So just think about that when you're planning. Make sure that these accommodations you put in the 504 plan are what is going to actually occur in the school.
And I'll tell you, with the Office for Civil Rights, what they look for is more process. And because, like us, they're not on the 504 team, they expect it to be individualized. So they, whatever plan you put into place, they expect it to be individualized. But they look at, did you follow the plan you created? Not necessarily what was on it, because they are assuming that you individualized it. But was it implemented? And was it implemented consistently? And that's why I'm saying you can't say, well, we couldn't get, someone for that day, so we just told them to stay at home or whatever. That's not going to fly with the Office for Civil Rights.
Yeah, and they're not looking at was what in the plan, was it appropriate? They're not looking at that. They're looking
at process and
did they do it?
Yeah. All right. This is where we've gone here now. We're going here. Your question in the chat.
Okay, so someone asked in the chat, do you need a healthcare plan or a 504 plan, or do you need one at the same time? Well, so an individualized healthcare plan or an emergency action plan, these are the differences. So you can sort of put this in your head in the right departments. So clinical medical management is what your healthcare plan sort of covers. So again, a nurse needs to be involved with that. Someone who's qualified to plan medical care for that student needs to be involved in that. As far as if they need nursing oversight during school hours, if there's any kind of medication administration, this is all covered in law. So an individualized healthcare plan, anytime anything is delegated, is going to be necessary. And so as far as the Section 504 plan, well, that is all your equal education access to school programs and activities. You may have some things that overlap. There may be some stuff in the Section 504 plan that's also in the healthcare plan and vice versa. But if they are needing access to their education and activities, then through coordinated adjustments, then you could possibly have both. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But it's just important. Another thing I wanted to bring up, you can go there. That's just fine. So a lot of times we talk about healthcare plans. Healthcare plans is an umbrella term. And so it can mean it's multiple documents. And so when you never want to use the word individualized healthcare plan if you don't have a school nurse, because that plan is a document that it translates the student's healthcare plan for an educational setting. So this is a document that is written by a nurse, and it's for the nurse or whoever they're passing off care to, as far as a licensed healthcare professional. It's not something that the staff will even ever see, but we use this term interchangeably in the schools. And so it's really just important to know that this individualized healthcare plan, or an IHP, is something that the nurse writes, and it actually is a foundational document that changes very frequently, and has multiple aspects of input, but it's not something that you want to attach to the 504. It's not something that you want. This is not for the staff. This is not something you'd put on your Power School or your SIS system. This is a document that the nurse it's an active document that the nurse is writing nursing diagnosis and planning their care on, checking for outcomes, and things like that.
Yeah, don't get confused with the IEP 504, where you don't need both of those. Don't get this confused.
Don't get this confused.
You don't need a separate 504 if a student has an IEP. Just put all of the modifications, accommodations into the IEP. This, you need to have separate documents.
Yes, if anything's delegated in the schools, you need an individualized healthcare plan that the nurse writes. And then along with that, just so for some background, not anyone can write an individualized healthcare plan, because the nurse is actually getting a confirmed medical diagnosis by a licensed healthcare provider. So I listed a couple of the healthcare providers on there, but just know that the definition is much broader than that. So even nurses are listed under the definition in law of healthcare provider and licensed healthcare provider. But the difference is it's not within a nurse's scope of practice to give a medical diagnosis. So there's a lot of stuff that goes along in the background to make this care plan, to make this safe medical care. And so those schools that don't have a school nurse, we should never be seeing the principal or another staff member writing a healthcare plan.
Okay. And so does that include we're going to that next. And so a diagnosis required for the IHP, no diagnosis required for the 504.
Right? That's correct.
Okay.
And then the next document, again, under that umbrella term of healthcare plan, is the emergency action plan. And so the definition of that, this is the document that school staff are going to see. It actually comes from the nurse's individualized healthcare plan. She'll then write the emergency action plan based
She has to write it?
She has to write it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
The and IHP has to be written by the registered nurse.
Absolutely. Oh. Yes. A registered nurse or an equivalent. So, that it's within their scope of practice. So again, this is not written by school staff. They can't just get say it's a charter school and they get a neighboring district form. They cannot write an emergency action plan. They cannot write a healthcare plan. This has to be by someone who's qualified to do that. So again, it's developed by the school nurse. It says also healthcare provider. And the reason I put that was healthcare provider could be a surrogate for that. But technically, even if they don't have a school nurse, they're not going to be in the schools, doing that. But we also have forms that have other areas where the healthcare provider does have to sign, like on medication authorizations, and sometimes those forms are combined. So just know that for an emergency action plan, planning that care, a lot of times our healthcare providers that aren't in the schools don't know what a school environment's like. And so you may...
They are doctors. They know everything.
They do know everything. So you may see things that really are not, you cannot do that in a school environment. And so that's why it's important to have the right people at the table when you're planning this care for our kids.
And guess what, doctors? You don't get to write 504 plans. Nope.
That's right.
But thanks for the information.
So again, the emergency action plan, the target audience for this is school employees. So that would be all your teachers. That would be, this is what you put in the red folder for the substitute teacher. It's written for school personnel in a language that they can understand. There's not a lot of medical acronyms. It usually says, like, if this happens, do this. It's steps to take. It's and then that plan, again, like I said, it comes from the individualized healthcare plan. And the requirement for that is that it should be a document that staff can understand.
Okay, yeah. Not being able to read even medical providers' handwriting.
Yes. And so through training, when the staff is being trained by a qualified healthcare professional, it's really important that they understand it. So again, if, say, the 504 coordinator is the person in the school providing the care, you never know. Mm-hmm. It's important that they ask questions, that those questions those considerations are being put into that plan.
When I get the emails with questions that are words that I don't understand, that's when I contact you. I'm like, I don't know what this is.
And same goes for 504 staff.
All right. Coordinating.
Okay. So
the plans. Yes. Okay. So we're going to identify and assess the students who may need health-related accommodations, modifications, and related services. If you think a child just needs a healthcare plan to meet their needs, a Section 504 evaluation should be considered, and the student should be referred for a 504 evaluation. We talked about this a lot I talk about this a lot with student with diabetes. If you have a 504, and if you have a student with an IHP, you need to consider that they might qualify under Section 504. It doesn't mean that they will need a plan, but you need to refer them, because if they have an IHP, they may have a disability under the definition of the ADA and a substantial limitation of one or more major life activities. In fact, it's very likely. We need to get our school nurses, anyone who's involved, that knows those words, like Kendra, to participate in the 504 team when it's appropriate. And then, like I said, keep those documents separate.
Yes. So continuing with that, healthcare plan, again, the umbrella term for those other documents we just talked about, is used for managing snacks, exposure prevention, and emergency response. It's a nursing-driven plan. It's not a civil rights document and does not offer the same protections that a 504 plan would offer. The Section 504 plan, just a quick note, remember it's across the classrooms, activities, programs, events, including field trips, out of state. Out of state, you're going on choir tour, whatever.
Going to New York for this and that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Make sure that those students have equal access.
And the important reminder
is that not all students with a healthcare plan will need a Section 504 plan, but all with a healthcare plan should be evaluated for the possible need of a Section 504 plan. And again, not all students with a Section 504 plan are going to need a healthcare plan, but it's always a good idea for the school nurses to evaluate those students to see if they may need a healthcare plan as well. Mm-hmm. So if anything medical comes up when the 504 coordinator is planning care, make sure you involve your school nurse. She may already have a plan in place, but don't assume that she does. It's a good opportunity to coordinate and to collaborate and to make sure that student has what they need.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I have an assignment for you. If you don't know who your school nurse is, you need to find out.
Please. Yeah.
Please, yes. Find out who your school nurse is and maintain the communication as a team. It's a system of support for our students. So any questions? Since we had a question about IHPs, do we have any follow-up
I can check again, but I didn't see
You
it.
didn't see any? Okay. All right.
Okay. So key takeaways. Make sure that the school staff is trained. As far as 504s.
By the appropriate person.
By the appropriate person, yes. Make sure that as far as 504s, especially when those students get to high school, my thing that I've always noticed is that when they're changing classes, that a lot of the new staff won't know what's going on. It's still the school's responsibility to train staff. So it's their responsibility to make sure that the entire school or anyone that's going to be in contact with that student is going to know the plan of care so that they can protect that student or provide the accommodations they need for their education. Make sure that the 504 plans are clear, they're reasonable, and it's important for staff to monitor them. A lot of times we put these plans in place and then they're not talked about again. But it's important that they are revisited and that they, new teachers especially, or substitute teachers, that they know that these accommodations are there. You're still responsible. Also, it's really important, and we mentioned this earlier, to keep the healthcare plan and the 504 plan separate. You could refer to a healthcare plan in the 504 plan, but you never want to attach the documents.
Right.
Because one of the reasons is if one document changes or is amended, which happens frequently, like with medication changes and things like that, you never want them attached because then you're going to have an old one for the with the 504 plan. And so you want to make sure that language is current and up to date. And because there is frequent changes, you want to make sure that they're kept separate.
Yeah. And you can say in the 504 plan, refer to the
student's healthcare plan.
Refer to, just
don't attach it.
Yeah.
And then also you want to justify and tie in your data. So especially when claiming a modification is maybe overly burdensome. So if you're saying that the school can't do it, it's up to the school to document and to figure out why and to make sure that's documented, especially for those cases, again, that may come up later the following year. They may come up, at a later date. Maybe you had a busy day that day. So make sure that as far as that you have that documented. If you're not going to be doing that, giving that service at the student, it's documented why.
And there is a high bar to meet for overly burdensome and unreasonable. And this is kind of along the lines where most courts and OCR have said that you can't guarantee an allergy-free environment. That may be unreasonable. Like I said, there's inconsistencies out there, but typically that's unreasonable or overly burdensome. But you got to have all your ducks in a row.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that a local education agency, so all of our public schools and our private schools, you can never exclude a student from a program or class without first determining whether that student can be accommodated or they can make accommodations for that student. So a lot of times we'll say, well, the student can't go on a field trip because unless the parent goes, we cannot do that. The school is responsible for making those accommodations and making those adjustments so that the student is safe at school.
Now, with private schools, it's only the private schools that receive federal funding. Otherwise, we don't get to say anything. They get to do then whatever they want. So, but if they receive federal funding, then the 504 they do have.
Which all of our LEAs in Utah do.
Well, yeah, if they receive federal funding, so our charter schools and our larger LEAs. Okay, so in this scenario, a parent sued because latex items occasionally entered the school building. And in this case, the court sided with the school. And this has to do with reasonably safe and not risk-free. So if someone's occasionally bringing in the school and you're monitoring, you're endeavoring to keep the area safe, one-time violations generally are not a FAPE violation. Generally, that you can't justify that you did not give nurses, like you didn't, you weren't proactive in that. But if balloons enter the school on a regular basis, on an irregular basis, if they enter the school, which reminds me, I was thinking about a conversation that I had. You need to be talking with your parent associations. So they're coming in and like let's think about our after school activities where they're selling snacks at the plays. They need to be aware, like you can have a gluten-free table there. But anytime your parent association, make sure that they're aware as well, that they're generously donating their time in your school. So, lot to think about, and we acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
And we acknowledge your efforts. And I know that you're going to leave this webinar like I am and go, wow. Or as we've been planning it, wow, that's a lot. But you have school nurses to rely on to kind of keep.
And your 504 section coordinators.
Yeah. That's why it's so important for us to work together. And I'm so fortunate to work with you. So any last questions? Because that's all we have, except for the wrap up. The wrap up. Yeah.
Let me take a look here.
Okay.
Okay.
So there are some comments, and that's it. Yeah.
Comments like, good job, ladies.
Yes, like Holly is the best working through a problem, which I totally agree with. So yeah, thank you for that comment. She is great to work with. We pull her into a lot of things.
Yeah, happy to. Okay, let's wrap up. All you.
It's all me. Okay, so for our school nurses, our registered nurses, and school nurses that are in attendance, you will receive 1.5 nursing continuing professional development contact hours if you complete this evaluation immediately after the session. So what I recommend now is that you pull your phone out, you scan the QR code, and you answer the evaluation questions. They're going to ask you some really hard questions, and then you will get a certificate for those contact hours. And so this needs to be completed before this today, Thursday, yes, before tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
End of day. Let's just say end of day, because some of our days don't end till 11:59 p.m. So yes, if you are watching this live, you will want to scan that QR code immediately and fill out the questionnaire so you can get your contact hours.
Okay.
This next slide is for those who are watching the YouTube webinar at a later date. You have until April 9th, 2029, which seems really far away, to receive the 1.5 nursing continuing professional development contact hours. So if you are watching this at a later date, the Department of Health and Human Services is gracious enough to offer you those nursing contact hours. So you would want to scan the QR code with your phone and complete the evaluation, and then a certificate and credit will be awarded if you watch this in its entirety.
Okay, we're QR code happy. One more. This is just a brief survey from the USBE about this presentation. I think it's pretty short. So that is the last QR code. Now, and as far as relicensure points, we'll be sending out something that just says, hey, do you want relicensure points?
For those who have a USBE relicensure
Yes. Different for school nurses.
Yes.
So if you're a licensed educator, you'll know what it is.
Yes.
It's like if you want to continue this education gig, you have to have certain amount of points. So we'll offer that. Which, by the way, if you haven't taken the Canvas course that I made, it has 7 different modules. You can do that. It's on it's on the Midas course catalog. And I am going to be doing a part 2 because since that was created. We've had several webinars since then. So you can look for that in the future for part 2. All right, here's some resources. We'll be sending these out. You're going to have to give us a second. Now, the YouTube video is still going to be available, like right after this. The unedited version. So,
Yes. Please keep that in mind.
yes, the unedited version. We don't really edit it. We just say what we say and move on with the day. So, you will get these slides, and you can immediately rewatch the video if it was.
Can you go back to that QR codes again really
QR
quick?
codes were one. Okay, not that one. Which one?
So the one for the, let's see. Yep, for that one. So again, that's for nurses wanting NCPD credits. There's the QR code. So hopefully you have your phones out. And then we'll go to the one with the USBE.
Okay, so not the nursing.
Not that one.
Okay, this one.
Yep. So the USBE feedback survey, again, this survey is for everyone. So please give us feedback so we can make this an essential training for you. We can change your ways.
Good luck with that. I've been this way for 53 years. I don't think it's changing.
I'll do my best. We do look at your feedback, so please provide it. And we appreciate you attending today.
That we do. Okay. Resources, contact info. And I just leave our email addresses because we're just running around all the time, and it's the best way to get in touch with us.
Yeah. So another thing with some individuals, because there's closed captions, are having difficulty with the QR codes. So I just wanted to say that once this ends, we will find a way to give you access to the slides
and accommodation.
And we'll make an accommodation. It's individualized just for you. So that you can access those surveys, which we so appreciate. Mm-hmm. So if you could come back and visit those, that would be great. And you should be able to access them then.
Yeah. Well, and some of us are just technologically challenged. I don't know why I looked at you, but you mentioned it before we started. So we're all technologically challenged at some point.
You'll have challenges.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to let you leave 8 minutes early.
Yes.
And please contact us if you have any questions, you ever need some to work through some scenarios.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll see you next year. This is the last one for this year. And we're looking at doing behavior. We've got a revised LRBI. We had talked about behavior before. We want to give you some really practical strategies with behavior because that seems to be a big conversation right now. And I'm on a great team with some behavior specialists where I will just sit and let them talk.
And will you please tell me what the acronym is for LRBI?
Oh, LRBI.
Just for those
Why
nurses
don't you
out there.
put me in the
Least
restrictive behavioral interventions.
Yeah. Yeah, we use a lot of acronyms. So if you have questions
true.
about those,
especially with our nurses out there.
Nurses are very good at using acronyms.
Yeah.
A lot of times because we're just trying to get through a conversation very quickly. So yes, if you have questions about that, we're happy to help you define those acronyms.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have a list somewhere. Or we should. All right. Well, see you next time. Good luck getting through the end of the year. You got this.
You're almost
appreciate
there.
you. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. See ya.